The late afternoon sun spilled through the blinds, casting warm stripes across the hardwood floor. My golden retriever, Max, lay stretched out in the patch of sunlight by the front window, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. He was the picture of peace, at least until the mail truck rattled down Oak Ridge Lane. Like clockwork, Max's head shot up. His ears perked, tail thumping against the floorboards. I barely had time to put down my coffee before the barking started, loud, excited, and relentless. "Max, easy boy," I called, hurrying over. Too late. The mailman had already hustled away from the porch, and Max's barks chased him all the way back to the truck. It was his daily ritual. He never hurt anyone, never even got close, just a big, goofy ball of energy announcing his presence to the world. "Crazy mutt," I muttered with a smile, scratching behind his ears. "You're going to give someone a heart attack one day." I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be. It started with a note. The next morning, I found a plain white envelope taped to my front door. No stamp, no name. Just neat, almost aggressive handwriting. "Your dog barks too much. Control him, or I will report this." I stood there on the porch, note in hand, coffee cooling in the other, and felt a flicker of irritation crawl up my spine. Max wagged his tail happily beside me, oblivious to the threat. "Seriously?" I muttered aloud, scanning the quiet, tree-lined street. The neighborhood looked as perfect as ever, two-story homes with manicured lawns, flower beds bursting with color, and American flags swaying gently in the breeze. Oak Ridge Lane was the kind of place you'd see on a postcard. Friendly waves, bake sales, block parties. But apparently, not everyone was feeling neighborly. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. Maybe someone was having a bad day. No big deal. 2 days later, I was hauling groceries from the car when I heard it, the unmistakable click of a phone camera behind me. I turned, bags dangling from my arms, and spotted her, the woman from 2 houses down. Tall, thin, silver hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore a pastel cardigan even though it was pushing 80 degrees. Her lips were pinched like she'd tasted something sour. She was standing on the sidewalk, phone raised, filming Max through the open front door as he barked at a squirrel. "Excuse me," I said, setting the bags down. "Can I help you?" She lowered the phone slowly, fixing me with an expression that could freeze lava. "Your dog," she said. "He's a nuisance." I blinked, trying to keep my voice even. "He's the dog. That's what dogs do. They bark. They don't bark for hours." Her words were sharp, clipped. "Some of us like peace and quiet." I almost laughed. Max barked, sure, but hours? No way. I worked from home. I knew his habits better than anyone. He'd bark at delivery trucks, squirrels, the occasional jogger, but it always passed in minutes. "Look," I said, "I'll keep an eye on him, okay?" Her eyes narrowed, like she didn't believe a word. Without another word, she turned on her heel and marched off down the sidewalk, her phone still clutched like a weapon. I watched her go, anger simmering beneath my skin. That was my first real encounter with Martha Green, though everyone just called her Martha the Menace behind her back. I'd heard whispers at block parties, little jokes about her being the self-appointed sheriff of Oak Ridge Lane, but I'd never crossed paths with her personally, until now. And I had a feeling this wasn't over. The first official complaint came a week later. I was pulling weeds in the front yard when a white SUV rolled up, the HOA logo stenciled on the side. A man in a crisp polo shirt stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Afternoon," he said, adjusting his sunglasses. "You the homeowner?" "Yep," I replied, wiping sweat from my brow. "Got a complaint about excessive dog barking. You have a golden retriever, right?" My stomach tightened. I forced a polite smile. "Yeah, that's Max. He barks sometimes, but neighbors say it's constant, disturbing the peace." "That's not true," I said, heat creeping into my voice. "I work from home. He doesn't bark for more than a few minutes at a time." The guy shrugged like it wasn't his problem, just passing along the complaint. "Consider this your warning." With that, he handed me a slip of paper, a bright yellow notice stamped with the HOA's logo, and walked back to his car. I stood there, notice in hand, watching him drive away, anger boiling over. A warning? For what? Having a dog that acted like a dog. Max trotted over, tongue lolling, tail wagging, completely unaware that he'd just been branded a criminal in the court of neighborhood politics. That night, I vented to my best friend on the phone. "You know what this is?" she said. "Power trip. That woman's bored out of her mind. So she's making your life hell. Yeah, well, she picked the wrong guy, I muttered. I'm not rolling over for this. I didn't know what I meant by that yet. But as I stood by the window, staring out at the row of identical houses under the pale glow of the streetlights, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about Max anymore. It was about principle. The next morning, I woke up to find a second note on my door. Last warning. Control that beast or animal control gets involved. And this time, there was a photo attached. A photo of Max, taken through my fence. Someone had crossed the line. I clenched the note so hard it tore in my fist. My pulse thundered in my ears as I scanned the street. Curtains twitched in the house across from mine. A shadow moved behind Martha Green's front window. And for the first time since moving into Oak Ridge Lane, I didn't feel like I was living in the perfect neighborhood. I felt like I was in enemy territory. I called Max to my side, running my fingers through his golden fur to calm us both down. His tail wagged happily, but his eyes searched mine like he knew something was wrong. Don't worry, buddy, I murmured. We're not going down without a fight. And deep down, I already knew. This was just the beginning. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. No notes. No HOA cars pulling up. Not even a glimpse of Martha's sharp profile in the window. It was like the storm had passed. For a moment, I almost believed it was over. Then the letter came. It wasn't taped to my door this time. It was official, an envelope from the county animal control office, stamped and sealed. My hands shook as I tore it open. Notice of complaint. Your dog has been reported for repeated disturbances. Continued violations may result in fines, impoundment, or removal of the animal. Impoundment. The word hit me like a punch to the chest. I read it 3 times, my stomach twisting into knots. Max was in the backyard, chasing a tennis ball, tongue hanging out in pure joy. The thought of him locked in some cold, sterile kennel because of a vindictive neighbor made my blood boil. This wasn't an idle threat anymore. This was real. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number on the letter, pacing the kitchen as it rang. Animal control. How can I help you? Yeah, I just got this notice about my dog, Max Golden Retriever. Says he's been reported for disturbances. Yes, sir, the woman said matter-of-factly. We received multiple complaints from your neighborhood. Multiple. My voice cracked with disbelief. He barks sometimes, but, look, I'm home all day. He's not causing any disturbance. I understand, sir, but we have to follow up on complaints. If the issue continues, there could be fines. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. So anyone can just lie? And I lose my dog. Sir, she said gently, like she'd had this conversation 100 times before. My advice is to keep your dog inside as much as possible. I hung up without another word, rage coursing through my veins. Keep Max inside, like he was a prisoner in his own home? Because some bored busybody decided she didn't like the sound of barking? Not a chance. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house set me on edge. Around midnight, I saw a movement outside, the beam of a flashlight sweeping across my yard. Heart pounding, I crept to the window and pulled the curtain back an inch. There she was, Martha, in her pink bathrobe, house slippers scuffing against the pavement, phone in one hand and flashlight in the other. She was standing at the edge of my property, angling her phone toward my backyard, toward Max. Something inside me snapped. I yanked the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. What the hell do you think you're doing? I shouted, my voice slicing through the quiet night. Martha froze like a deer in headlights, then straightened, her face hard as stone. I have every right to document disturbances, she said coolly. And your dog? He's asleep. I jabbed a finger toward the backyard. You're out here at midnight spying on my house, and you're worried about my dog? Don't you raise your voice at me, she hissed, her eyes glinting in the moonlight. I'm protecting this neighborhood from people like you who think rules don't apply. People like me? I barked out a bitter laugh. Lady, you need a hobby. Her nostrils flared. You'll regret saying that. She turned sharply and marched back to her house, the flashlight beam bobbing wildly with each furious step. I stood there in the doorway, fists clenched, watching her disappear into the shadows. I knew then, this wasn't going to stop. She wasn't just trying to silence Max. She wanted control. Total control. And I wasn't about to give it to her. The next morning, I went into full defense mode. First, I set up cameras, front yard, backyard, even a doorbell cam. If Martha wanted to play games, I'd have the receipts. Then I started researching noise ordinances and HOA bylaws like a law student cramming for finals. Turns out, there were no specific limits on dog barking, just vague language about excessive noise. Which meant it was all subjective, which meant I needed proof. So I downloaded an app that tracked decibel levels and ran for days at a time. Every time Max barked, I noted the time, the duration, the noise level. The longest he ever went. 2 minutes. 2 minutes of barking, and Martha was acting like I had a kennel full of hounds howling at the moon all night. I documented everything, because something told me this was about to get ugly. Sure enough, the next strike came fast. I came home from the grocery store one afternoon and found a bright red sticker slapped across my front door. Final warning. Remove nuisance animal or face fines up to $1,000 per day. The HOA seal glared at me like a scarlet letter. My pulse spiked as I ripped the notice down and stormed inside, dialing the number at the bottom. The woman on the other end sounded cheerful until I gave my address. "Oh yes," she said briskly. "We've received numerous complaints about your property." "Complaints?" I spat. "From who?" "I can't disclose that, sir." "Of course you can't," I muttered. "Look, I've got video proof, audio logs. My dog barks for 2 minutes at a time, tops. This is harassment. I'm sorry you feel that way, but the board has the authority." I hung up before I said something that would land me in jail. That night, I sat on the couch with Max's head in my lap, scratching behind his ears while he snored softly. "What are we gonna do, buddy?" I whispered. His tail thumped in his sleep, blissfully unaware that his world was under siege. I stared at the glow of the TV, but I wasn't watching the screen. My mind was spinning, calculating, planning. I wasn't just defending Max anymore. I was going to end this. But I had no idea how far Martha was willing to go. Because the next morning, I woke to flashing lights. 2 county sheriff cruisers parked in front of my house, and an officer knocking on my door. I opened the door to find 2 deputies standing on my porch, hands resting casually on their belts, sunglasses reflecting the morning sun. Behind them, their cruisers sat like silent predators on the curb. My stomach dropped. "Morning, sir," the taller one said, voice calm but firm. "We received a call about an aggressive dog on the loose at this address." My blood ran cold. "Aggressive dog? Are you kidding me? Max hasn't even been out today." "Sir, we just need to confirm everything's fine," the second deputy said. "Mind if we take a look?" I stepped aside, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Be my guest." They followed me through the house and out to the backyard, where Max was lounging in the grass, chewing on his favorite blue squeaky toy. He looked up at the newcomers, tail wagging like he'd just met his 2 new best friends. "Yep," I said bitterly. "Real killer, isn't he?" The taller deputy crouched down, letting Max sniff his hand. "Sweet dog," he said. "Doesn't look aggressive to me." "Because he's not," I snapped. This is the 3rd false complaint in a week. It's the same person, neighbor down the street, Martha Green. She's been stalking my house, taking pictures, filing reports. "Sir," the deputy interrupted gently. "We can't get involved in neighbor disputes unless there's a crime. But false reports? That's a different story." "Good," I said, voice tight. "Because this is harassment." The deputy straightened, giving me a sympathetic look. "Document everything. Keep a record. If it continues, you can file a harassment complaint." "Trust me," I said. "I'm documenting." They left with a friendly pat on Max's head, but the humiliation burned deep. My neighbors had seen the cruisers. Curtains had shifted, silhouettes lingered. By dinner time, the whole street would know about the dog problem. That was exactly what Martha wanted. She wasn't just trying to silence Max. She was trying to ruin me. That night, as darkness fell over Oak Ridge Lane, I sat in my office surrounded by files, printed emails, HOA notices, animal control letters. My laptop glowed with spreadsheets of barking logs, video clips from my cameras, timestamps down to the second. I wasn't just fighting a neighbor anymore. I was building a case. And somewhere between uploading another video and sipping cold coffee, a thought hit me. What if I turned the tables? The next morning, I started my plan. Step 1, Max stayed inside during the day. No ammo for Martha. I bought him puzzle toys, played fetch down the hallway, even built a makeshift agility course in the living room. He hated being cooped up, but I whispered promises into his silky ears. "Just a little longer, buddy. We're gonna win this." Step 2, I started watching her. Every move, every shady little stunt. It didn't take long to catch something. On the third day, my doorbell cam pinged at 5:17 a.m. I scrolled back and froze. Martha, in her robe again, crouched at the edge of my lawn with a sound recorder. She was literally trying to manufacture evidence. "Oh, Martha," I whispered, a dark smile curling my lips. "You just handed me gold." I clipped the footage, saved it, and filed it under a new folder. Gotcha. By the end of the week, I had hours of video. Martha lurking near my fence, talking to other neighbors in hushed tones, even sticking something through the slats of my yard. Looked like a squeaky toy tied to a string. She was baiting Max. I almost confronted her then and there, but something held me back. Not yet. Timing was everything. Then came the HOA meeting. Once a month, the board gathered in the community clubhouse, a beige building that smelled faintly of Lysol and stale coffee. I'd never been to one before, but that night, I showed up early, evidence folder under my arm, heart pounding like a war drum. The room buzzed with small talk as neighbors trickled in, paper plates of cookies on the refreshment table, folding chairs in neat rows. Martha was already there, perched in the front row like a queen on her throne, pastel cardigan draped over her shoulders. Our eyes met across the room. Her lips curved into a smug little smile. She thought she'd won. The meeting started, all the usual boring stuff, budget updates, landscaping complaints, until the chairperson cleared his throat and said, "Next on the agenda, nuisance animal reports." Every head turned toward me. Martha rose gracefully, smoothing her cardigan like she was about to deliver a sermon. "This community," she began, her voice dripping with righteous indignation, "is a place of peace. A place where families can enjoy their homes without constant disruption. But lately, that peace has been shattered by one homeowner's blatant disregard for the rules." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I felt my jaw clench. She went on, painting a picture of Max as some unholy terror. Constant barking, aggressive behavior, sleepless nights for innocent neighbors. By the time she was done, half the room was glaring at me like I was harboring Cujo in my backyard. "Thank you, Martha," the chairperson said. "Does the homeowner wish to respond?" I stood slowly, folder in hand. My legs trembled, but my voice was steady. "Yeah," I said. "I've got something to say." I walked to the front, every eye following me, and set the folder on the table with a satisfying thud. "For the past 3 weeks, my dog has been accused of everything short of arson," I began. So I started keeping records. Logs, decibel readings, video surveillance. You know what I found? I opened the folder, pulling out printouts and slapping them down like cards in a poker game. The longest he's ever barked? 2 minutes. Average noise level? 75 decibels. For reference, that's quieter than a vacuum cleaner. But that's not the best part. I held up a glossy photo, the still shot from my doorbell cam. Martha, crouched in the pre-dawn darkness with her recorder. Gasps rippled through the room. "This," I said, voice rising, "is Martha Green, trespassing on my property. At 5 in the morning. With a recorder. Manufacturing evidence." Martha shot to her feet, face flaming red. "That's a lie. That photo is. Want to see the video?" I cut in, waving my phone. "Because I've got 10 more just like it. Including the one where you stick a toy through my fence to make Max bark." The room erupted. Shocked whispers, mutters of "unbelievable." Someone even laughed. Martha's face twisted into something ugly, her composure cracking like thin ice. You can't." "Oh, I can," I said coldly. "And I'll do more. Because filing false reports? Harassment? That's a crime. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop every complaint, stay off my property, and leave my dog alone. Or the sheriff's office gets this entire file." Silence. Dead, heavy silence. Martha's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Finally, she spun on her heel and stormed out, the door slamming so hard the cookies rattled on the table. I turned back to the board, heart pounding. "Any questions?" I said. No one spoke. When I walked out of that clubhouse, the night air felt electric against my skin. Max was waiting in the truck, tail thumping wildly when he saw me. I slid into the driver's seat, laughing for the first time in weeks. "We did it, buddy," I whispered, ruffling his fur. "We beat her." Or so I thought. Because the next morning, I found something in my mailbox that made my blood run cold. Not a note. Not a warning. A lawsuit. Filed by Martha Green. I stared at the envelope like it was a live grenade. My hands felt clammy as I tore it open, and the words inside hit me like a freight train. Plaintiff, Martha Green. Defendant, my name. Complaint, nuisance, emotional distress, property value depreciation. Property value depreciation? Emotional distress? Overbarking? My first reaction was disbelief. My second was a burst of raw, searing anger that made my vision blur. She wasn't just trying to get Max taken away. She was trying to destroy me. My house. My savings. Everything I'd worked for. Max trotted into the kitchen, tail wagging, completely oblivious. His eyes sparkled like always, trusting me to keep him safe. I sank into a chair, clutching the papers, and whispered, "Don't worry, buddy. We're not losing this." The next 48 hours were a blur of panic and planning. I called every attorney within 50 miles, begging for advice. Most wanted retainer fees that made my stomach churn. Finally, I found one, Sandra Klein. Mid-40s, sharp as a blade, with a voice like steel and zero tolerance for bullies. "First thing," she said during our consultation, leaning across her desk, "do not panic. This is a scare tactic. People like your neighbor? They use lawsuits as weapons because they think you'll fold." "Well, I'm not folding," I said through gritted teeth. "But can she actually win?" Sandra smirked. "Not if what you told me is true. You've got evidence." "Oh, I've got evidence," I said. "Videos. Logs. Audio. Good," she said, flipping through the papers. "Because we're going to bury her in it." Court day arrived faster than I could blink. The county courthouse loomed like a fortress of gray stone, and I swear my knees knocked as I walked inside with Sandra. She moved like a soldier on a mission, heels clicking against the tile, briefcase swinging like a weapon. Inside the courtroom, Martha sat at the plaintiff's table in a powder blue suit, lips pursed in that same pinched expression. Her lawyer was a slick-looking guy with gelled hair and an expensive watch, probably charging her by the minute. She didn't even glance at me. Fine by me, because I wasn't here for a fight. I was here for a war. The judge was an older man with silver hair and the kind of face that said he'd seen every ridiculous dispute known to mankind. He scanned the file with a sigh and said, "All right, let's hear it." Martha's lawyer launched into a dramatic monologue about unbearable noise, mental anguish, and how his client's quality of life had been destroyed. Martha dabbed at her eyes with a tissue like she was starring in a soap opera. When he finished, the judge turned to Sandra. "Your response." Sandra stood, calm and collected, and said, "Your Honor, my client is being harassed. These claims are not only baseless, they're fabricated, and we can prove it." She strode to the bench and placed a thick binder down with a satisfying thump. Exhibit A through Z, continuous surveillance footage, noise logs, timestamps. Not only does the dog bark minimally, within legal limits, but we also have video evidence of the plaintiff trespassing on my client's property in an attempt to provoke the dog. Martha's head snapped toward her lawyer. His smirk faltered. "Additionally," Sandra continued, voice like a scalpel, "we have documented proof of the plaintiff using sound recorders and toys to manufacture disturbances." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You have video of that?" Sandra smiled. "Would you like to see it?" The courtroom went silent as Sandra queued up the footage on a screen. There it was in full color. Martha, crouched by my fence at 5 a.m., recorder in hand. Another clip of her dangling a squeaky toy through the slats, glancing around like a cat burglar. Gasps rippled through the room. Martha's face turned crimson. Her lawyer stammered something about context, but the judge held up a hand. "Enough," he said. His voice cracked like a whip. "This is outrageous. Ms. Green, you've wasted this court's time and harassed your neighbor without cause." He slammed the gavel. "Case dismissed, with prejudice." "And Ms. Green? Consider yourself lucky I'm not imposing sanctions for malicious prosecution." The breath I'd been holding for weeks finally whooshed out of me. I felt lightheaded, like the weight of a mountain had been lifted off my chest. Sandra gave me a nod. Cool, professional, but I swear I saw the ghost of a smile. As we walked out of the courthouse, the sun hit my face like freedom itself. Reporters weren't waiting or anything dramatic like that. This wasn't Hollywood, but in my head, triumphant music was blasting. "Martha." She stormed past us without a word, face twisted with fury. And for the first time, I didn't care what she thought. Because I'd won. Life returned to normal, or as normal as it could on Oak Ridge Lane. Martha kept her head down after that. No more notes. No more spying. If we passed on the sidewalk, She looked the other way. And Max? He got his backyard time back. I watched him chase squirrels under the warm spring sun, tail wagging like he'd never known there was a war fought in his name. One evening, I sat on the porch with a cold beer, Max at my feet, the neighborhood quiet except for the hum of cicadas and the distant bark of another dog. I looked down at him, his golden fur glowing in the sunset, and said, "We did it, buddy." He wagged his tail and rested his head on my knee, eyes full of trust. And for the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. Until the mail came the next day. A thick envelope. From the HOA. And just like that, I knew. This story wasn't over. If you enjoyed this intense story, smash that like button and subscribe for more gripping, cinematic tales. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss the next thriller. Your support keeps these stories coming.